My fellow Ambalanders, dear soldiers of the Ambazonian Revolution, I want to thank all of you for your positive thoughts since the last time I addressed the Ambazonian people. I want to thank everyone for your words of encouragement, your sense of solidarity, and your continuous rededication to the defense of our homeland and the recognition of our state. I want to thank our soldiers on the ground. I want to wish Comrade Ngalim at the Kondengi Maximum Security Prison a speedy recovery after his operations. I want to thank all those warriors who are detained since 2015 at the Bamenda prison. I want to assure you that the men and women you left behind are committed to the liberation of homeland so you can return home in peace, and with gratitude to all those who've laid their lives and sacrificed their limbs for our country. I want to continuously encourage all those who are locked up in Kondengi, detention centers in Douala, the western province of Cameroon, and in other places we may not know. Let me assure you that you will return to a free country, a better place than you left. I will want to encourage you to remain together, work together in detention, understand each other, build the kind of solidarity that is needed to survive under detention. I want to thank our mothers who are going through pain, our sisters who are definitely unsure about what tomorrow brings, and the entire Ambazonian people for the sacrifices they are making. No other people have gone through so much suffering. First under the Germans more than 100 years ago, then under the British more than 55 years ago, and now under the French for close to 60 years. We have lived under one form of occupation, one form of brutality, and one form of usurpation of our right to exist as a free people. I would like to invite each and every one of you to join me to observe a minute of silence in remembrance of all those who've left us, who've paid the ultimate sacrifice so Ambazonia shall yet be free. May the souls of our departed comrades rest in perfect peace. The history of Ambazonia will record your sacrifices, and your family and your great-grandchildren will remember you forever. My fellow countrymen and women, I wouldn't take quite long tonight. I thought it important to come here and have this discussion with you because I have come to the conclusion that some people enjoy chaos. Each time we take 10 steps forward, some form of chaos is artificially created to crowd the optimism that is necessary to prosecute a revolution like ours. Revolutions are prosecuted with a sense of hope. It's a long process. It's a difficult climb. And so you need inspiration. You need understanding. You need to know that you are making progress. You need to know it shall be okay, even under difficult circumstances. You need to be sure about the words that leaders utter. You need to be sure about the programs they present to you. You need to be very certain about the policies they conceive, articulate, and cause to be implemented. This sense of clarity is important in any revolution if the people are going to be dedicated to continue the race to the finish line. One of the greatest assets in the hands of the enemies of revolution is confusion. Once you are confused, you lose motivation. Once you lose motivation, you don't invest in your own freedom. Once you don't invest in your own freedom, the occupier and all those who will suck your right to exist as a free people have their day. So I thought it wise to come back to you to give some clarity where we are and where we are headed to and how this revolution has been prosecuted thus far. I know sometimes it may sound like a lecture, but permit me, there is no better way I can put it than to give you a certain level of understanding where you are. Because this is your revolution. You are the masters of this revolution. You are the ones who determine whether policies will be implemented or not. And so, some of us lack the analytical skills, the depth of understanding about these revolutions, because sometimes we are not exposed to the level of knowledge that could give us the skills to analyze a revolution as complex as ours. So it's the duty of leadership to constantly come to the population and have this discussion so they can be at par in the way that they feel and in the measures that they intend to take. This is what I'd like to assure you. Our revolution is okay. For anyone who has studied revolutions in the last 100 years, this will come to be one of the fastest revolutions that has been prosecuted with Dane guns and by a people who suffered almost 100 years of different forms of colonial occupation. We've come thus far, and I can tell you with certain level of certainty that we are doing good. I know those who enjoy chaos, because sometimes chaos gives them the possibility to think they would be seen as the harbinger of stability. That's why they create chaos. They create chaos and project themselves so you can believe, oh, you know, they are the ones who will bring stability. No, they will not bring stability. Any house built on a faulty foundation can only last that long. If there is any one example you have in your hands, it's Cameroon. For more than 60 years, this house was built on a faulty premise, prosecuted with brutality, intoxication through CRTV, manipulation through state-controlled newspapers, and they thought they were going to make us Cameroonians, where we worship their flags, sang their anthems, and behaved to be Roger rather than Te, to be able to have opportunity. And so you're watching a replay of that kind of a movie in this revolution. And if you are smart enough, you have to change the channel. Change the channel and go to the channel of hope and certainty, where there is understanding and clarity. You need clarity, understanding, and certainty to be able to understand where you are and to know how much investment to make. If you don't have that certainty and clarity, you are wasting your time. You will be going around this circle for the next 100 years and you will never be free. So my people, permit me to always come back to you when I find this level of chaos that is being manufactured to give you the impression that our revolution is collapsing. No, some houses are collapsing. The revolution is as strong as it was. And I can tell you with certainty that after having achieved contenderhood at the international system, we will be putting down a program that will give you absolute and unfettered control of the territorial integrity of Ambazonia, and to give you the kind of respect internationally that will give you the recognition you require to be the masters of your own destiny. In the last few days, the Ambazonian Governing Council leadership had some high-level meetings in Washington. The Secretary for International Recognition and the National Security Advisor and a member of the communications team, met some high-level officials in Washington. And as I said the last time, most of these discussions will remain classified, but I can tell you with certainty and clarity that they are ongoing, because we are now a contender, so we don't need to hide when we have these discussions. We are now a contender. We have been seen as a stakeholder in the conflict that is going on, and there will be more opportunities for this international system to have these discussions with us. And it was a high-level discussion, and it went quite well. So the Ambazonian people, you need to know these things. In the next few weeks, the Vice President of the Ambazonian Governing Council, who will be leading the political processes of collaboration and making sure we project authority and recognition, will be holding some high-level meetings also with 3 others within the Foreign Department of the AGC and possibly the Secretariat in one of the European countries. That will be a first of its kind. It will be a working session for 3 days with important stakeholders who will also engage in some kind of education to make us understand how you can govern your country when you take it over. And I think, as the Vice President explained in the last outing he made, he's been reaching out to other high-level stakeholders in our revolution. And in the next few weeks, I've been briefed. They will be meeting together somewhere out here in Europe to have some concrete discussions. I think those stakeholders have been briefed, and continuous information will be provided to them so all of them can have this meeting to project the Ambazonian people as a solidified foundation upon which the international community can lay its trust. This is what you should know. As I said, I don't say things just to please. I don't say things because they are necessary for you to like me. You must not like me, but at least you should understand me. So I say things when I am sure that the necessary homework has been done, and I have reached a certain level of understanding that it is time to communicate a certain level of information to the Ambazonian people. It is not an AGC information, it's not an Ayaba information, it's an Ambazonian information. And as I promised you before, we will walk this journey together. Everyone, the good, the bad, the ugly, those you like and those you don't like. And we should be able to reach Boya as a people. That will be the most beautiful thing, the most beautiful gift we can ever offer our country. And I work hard, so hard to make sure this promise is kept. And I am really grateful to the leadership of Dr. Nyi, the Vice President of the Ambazonian Governing Council, Dr. Larry Ayamba, FINDEP and COMDEP, and the others for making sure these things are done following the charter of the Ambazonian Governing Council, and making sure we can tap from other revolutions and understand why chaos doesn't help us, it only helps the enemy. Let me also talk about contenderhood in Ground Zero. This is what you should know. It is subject to different levels of interpretation. But I'm going to present certain facts, and I'm going to do some subjective analysis, and hope it's those subjective, but you can appreciate it from an objective perspective. What we know is that on the ground, Ambazonia now controls about 80% of the Ambazonian territory. I am not talking about physical control. I am talking about where we have psychological and strategic control. It's 80% of our territory. La République du Cameroon has been relegated to big cities. They have evacuated most villages, most districts, and they are now hiding sometimes in those places in barracks, and can only go out when we are not sure. So you now control about 80% of the Ambazonian territory. And lest you forget, this is the result of the block-by-block approach, where a bottom-up approach of resistance makes sure you spread the enemy wide and thin, and you hand control to the neighborhoods, to all those who live in that area, and who can decide the destiny of that neighborhood and that block, and make sure, you can make it ungovernable, you can increase the cost of the occupation. So you now control 80%. And I think I had a discussion with Comrade Bo the other day. He gave me these facts, and these are irrefutable facts. You now control 80% of your homeland. But this is the most interesting fact. You have authority. Listen carefully. you have authority and power over 95% of Ambazonia. That means you can successfully impose ghost towns over 95% of our territory. You can successfully impose lockdown over 95% of our territory. So if you combine 80% control, 95% projection of authority, we can conclude with certainty that La République is defeated in Ambazonia. Yes, 80% control, 90% projection of authority and power gives you the right to tell the international system that La République has been defeated in the homeland. Now, you may conceive of a revolution for liberation and restoration as an act where you will have to take over the entire territory of Ambazonia to be able to have independence. No. You can control just one state effectively and still have independence. The occupier can have control over 95% physical control of your territory, and you control just 10%. But once you are able to impose ungovernability, make sure the occupation is prosecuted at a higher cost, you can claim effectively ownership of your land and call on the international system to accord recognition of that state. So it is very important we understand this logic, because we can factor this in strategic thinking, in the way we formulate policies, and in the way we prosecute the revolution on the ground. This is very important for the soldiers. So the soldiers have to understand, you don't need to physically hold territory to be able to be independent. But you can effectively have psychological control over territory, impose your rule over that territory, and gain independence. This is why the formulation of strategies in a revolution must be based on in-depth understanding on the objective you want to attain, the strategy you want to implement, and the nature of the beast you are dealing with, and most importantly, a detailed understanding of international law and how the international system functions. Ambazonians, freedom begins from here. If you believe you are a people, if you believe you are free, stop fighting one another. Put a big smile on your face. Claim Ambazonia in your heart. And the rest will be done for you. That's why we are winning. Because leadership understands the stakes of the game. Leadership understands what it will take to defeat the enemy. Leadership understands what the international system, how it operates. And we know, we believe in the Ambazonian people's ability to survive any form of occupation. Now, in the coming weeks and months, there may arise the necessity for us to move our capital from Buea. I am not going to go into the details, but I would like you to start having this in the back of your mind. There may arise the necessity to temporarily move our capital from Buea to a new location where we can exercise effective both physical and psychological control. That will translate into some policy formulations and articulations that you will understand in the months ahead. So whenever this decision is made, I will give proper explanation to the Ambazonian people why this decision has been made. But make no mistake, our capital will remain Buea. But sometimes in a revolution, there is the strategic necessity to move the capital to a location that is defensible, it is perceived as free, and where the seat of any government you decide to form might take root. So that is a possibility going forward. Now, what are the implications of these analyses that I'm making? I want to prepare your mind for something. And I'm preparing the international system to understand that we are not just some rogues holding den guns and running around sticking our den guns in the lives of the occupier. But that we understand exactly what we are doing, where we are headed to, and exactly the kind of land that we intend to have. The necessity for the international system to recognize Ambazonia is very, very important. It's critical. They are having all of these discussions in the UN Security Council. They are having these discussions in the House of the Senate, in the House of Lords, in the Bundestag and other institutions. The United Nations Humanitarian Authority produced data in the past few weeks that said the conflict is affecting 4 million Ambazonians, with 1.5 million absolutely needing humanitarian aid. More than 460,000, I think Baramak put it to 500, internally displaced persons. The number of refugees moving into Nigeria is also increasing. The level of impunity by Cameroon has reached the level of satanic understanding, where more than 500 villages have been razed down, thousands of houses burnt, schools are shut down, economic activities have come to a halt. Now, this is why they need to recognize Ambazonia. You see, no matter the amount of money you give Aya Foundation, it cannot take care of more than 500,000 IDPs. It cannot reconstruct more than 500 houses that have been burnt. It cannot rebuild the system. No matter the amount of money the United Nations is going to put in, it is not going to solve the humanitarian crisis. Fellow Ambazonians, they know it. You know it. I know it. The only institution that will be able to solve the humanitarian and political crisis is an Ambazonian government. An Ambazonian government duly installed in our capital, or in a safe capital that we might create. If they recognize Ambazonia, they give us access to international institutions, credit institutions, humanitarian institutions, and we become the sole instrument of policy implementation. This is what I mean. At this stage of our revolution, Cameroon remains the sole instrument of policy implementation. It means humanitarian activities within Ambazonia has to still necessitate the permission of Cameroon. But Cameroon understands that if you provide that access, you strengthen the fighting capabilities, you strengthen the defensive capabilities of the Ambazonian people. So the reason why some countries refuse humanitarian aid, it is because they want to use its avoidance or its absence to impose some cost on the resistance. That is why they need to recognize Ambazonia as a free country, because, as I said, you control 80%, you have political authority over 95%. So they need to recognize us so we can have access to making those decisions that can remove the IDPs from the bushes, start rebuilding homes and resettling our people, bringing back the refugees from Nigeria, opening our schools so that a generation is not lost out of education, and developing policies to integrate ourselves within the West African Economic Community. Don't forget, the Gulf of Guinea is the highest route of trade within that particular region. Any instability within Ambazonia is going to affect international trade. It's going to affect international peace and security, because it's a volatile region surrounded by, you find the rebels in eastern Nigeria, you find Boko Haram in the north, and instability in Ambazonia is going to have great repercussions in terms of prices of oil, in terms of international mobility of people that is going to affect security of nations, is going to dislocate communities in other countries, is going to affect, the way that they generate policies within their own country. So the necessity based on these realities that I have given for the international system to recognize Ambazonia is right now, and the vice president and his team and other international stakeholders are making sure in these discussions that we are having that it's time to recognize Ambazonia if you want to stop the chaos and the madness from Yaoundé. My fellow people, now, you know, what puzzles me is that if you look at these facts, I'm not talking about constructed facts. I'm not talking about political facts. I'm not talking about Ayaba facts, AGC facts. I'm talking about objective facts. If you look at them, Cameroon has lost control over Ambazonia. That's a fact. If you say ghost town, it takes place 90% in Ambazonia. Immutable fact. If you want to shut down Bamenda tomorrow, you shut it down 95%. That's a fact. Do you still know we have Ambazonians? You call them federalists. I call them enablers, collaborators. They are still batting for Cameroon. They are still going around the world trying to convince us to be slaves in the land of our birth, in the land of Kuva Likenye, of the General Ivos, in the land of the big numbers. They are still going around, batting for the occupier, hoping to God Almighty that you will be so sick and tired of fighting, so gullible, that they will convince you to be slaves. Let me remind you. Let me remind you. On the 22nd of January 1961, the Prime Minister of Nigeria, Tafawa Balewa, this is what he said. If you vote to join Cameroon, I cannot see how you can avoid living a life of poverty and hardship and under the constant shadow of violence which the government cannot control. This is what Endele told you. I want the enablers and the collaborators to listen carefully. Those who want you to stake your future in the house of chaos, in the house where you're raped, where your resources are exploited with impunity to build a large army to keep you as a slave in the land of your birth. I can tell you, if all of you decide to be with Cameroon, I will occupy Ambazonia alone. I will occupy it alone and you can move over across. But listen to what Endele said. If you vote for Cameroon Republic, you will invite a new system under which everyone lives in fear of the police and the army. You will not be free to move about. You cannot lecture freely or discuss your political views in public. And you can be arrested and flogged by the police and even imprisoned without a fair trial. Pa Tasang should be listening to this. Benji, Nelson, Cedric, Rene. They're surely listening to this. Ndango is listening. Numvi is listening to this. My fellow people, Ambazonia is your homeland. Ambazonia is the only place you have that you can call home. All of you in exile, including myself, we are nomads. Our body is here, our soul is wandering. Some of you that I have lost as friends, classmates, that have built their own political career on blackmail and sabotage those who've bled for, sacrificed for, who are in exile. We are all slaves. Our bodies are all out here. Our soul is wandering. It needs a resting place. It needs a home. And that place is called Ambazonia. No one should ever deceive you. No one should ever deceive you that any day in our existence anymore, we will live with Cameroon. I can tell you from the blood that flows in my vein, that the last chapter of Cameroon's history in the land of our birth has been completed. No people goes through this level of pain and suffering from a relatively backward people who sought asylum in our own country, people we treated as brothers and sisters. We make our cities their home. We gave them refugee status. They treat us like slaves in the land of our birth. And you still have Ambazonians crisscrossing the world, trying desperately to convince us fellow countrymen and women. You may be going through moments of uncertainty today, but I want to assure you, you will have your country. The international system is prepared for that. You must be prepared for that. Cameroon is prepared for that. Ambazonia is gone. No one, not Tumi, not Bala, not the others, will convince anyone. If we had the possibility to change our neighbor, we will replace Cameroon with Somalia as our neighbor. They have done us so much harm. They have done us so much irreparable harm that we just need space in our own land, preferably to live in poverty, but with dignity. To live in poverty, but with hope. To live in poverty, but with certainty. Let no one take away your thunder. Let no one, domestic or external, manipulate you to think, to fear, have hope. I told you before, I am a stubborn optimist. Stubborn optimist. From the day you knew me, I have not changed. Like me, hate me, but listen to me. We may disagree. It is not an Ayaba Republic I'm trying to create. It's Ambazonia, our country. Some say we should call for ceasefire. We didn't declare war. We didn't declare war. Those who declared war on us at the tarmac of an international airport should get the hell out of our homeland. To call for ceasefire, there must be negotiation effort designed to move them out of our territory and let Ambazonians take over the governing of their country. My fellow Ambazonians, there is nothing greater to have a country of your own. There is nothing better in life to live in the land of your birth. There is nothing so sacrosanct to be knowledgeable about the truth and stand to defend it even with your blood and your life. There is no better honor to give to your grandchildren and great-grandchildren and to lay your life for what is right and what is just. There is no better sacrifice than to give your life to free a homeland that has been beleaguered and battered for more than 100 years. Trust this soldier of the revolution. All of those who enable and collaborate with Cameroon, I can assure every Ambazonian, wherever a Tanganji will be buried, we will dig that grave. They will not have a resting place even after death. This is a solemn promise you should have. Even if I don't live to see independence, I will require and want Ambazonians to make sure these people who have caused us so much pain never even have a burial spot. The Achidi Achos, the Musonges. You've caused us so much harm, so much pain. I came here to have this short conversation with you and to assure you that your revolution is gaining traction. I invite all of you to join the Replacing the Dingon project. Ambazonians, you have the men and women ready to battle the enemy. Give them the tools. It's an investment you will never regret. A sacrifice worth making. In honor of Mamea P. In honor of General Ivo, Akum. In reassuring all those detained in our name, been ripped apart from their families. God bless you all. Ambazonia is free.